Hey everyone, Mitch here. Today I've got a demonstration on composition that talks about integration, variation, and movement, three of the most important compositional considerations. As you may know, my work straddles the border between representation and abstraction, so we'll see with these paintings that these principles are at work at both the representational and abstract levels. I've described these paintings as part color field study and part landscape. My intention is that the color field part of the painting is the first thing you are struck by. The light is coming at you, or you fall into the light. The landscape component, the rivers or the bridges that are hinted at along the bottom, they come in second in terms of perception. This is how I keep it mostly abstract. Now these paintings don't have a lot of elements or a lot of shapes, so they might not seem like there's a lot of composition going on, but there definitely is. I'd like to say that not a square inch of the painting is untouched by composition and design. Every single shape and every single space between those shapes has to be considered. So what's the compositional challenge with these? Well, one of them is the balance between the two large zones. The upper sky area, which is the dominant area, and then the small strip of ground plane at the bottom, which is recessive. I don't want the sky and the ground to feel totally separate. The word I use for this is integration. I want the upper portion and the lower portion to join somehow. One way I do this is by controlling the value. If I made the ground plane at the very bottom very dark, like it was in reality, then it might feel too separate from the sky zone and feel too heavy sitting on the bottom. So you can see on the left side, I've almost merged the values of the ground and the sky. And then on the right, at the horizon, the sky and the ground are almost the same color and value. This helps tie together the upper and lower portions of the composition. This merging of the sky and the ground through value is even more pronounced in this study. On the left, just above the bridge, the darker value joins with the sky. It even stretches all the way to the top and gently arcs over to the right. On the right, at the horizon, there's a light spot like a patch of water that's lit up, and it also merges up into the lightest portion of the sky. Now there's another really important aspect of composition that I try to get into each of these, and that's movement. It's especially important in paintings that are as simple as these. I don't want the viewer to be bored. I want their eye to move in and around the composition. In this piece, which we saw just a minute ago, you can see that there's an implied circular movement on the left, and then some lines of perspective on the right. So our eye doesn't just land on the darker portion at the bottom and sit there. It has pathways to follow that keep the eye moving back and forth. And then there is also that upward movement on the sides again, connecting the lower portion with the upper portion with values. There are two types of movement. The first type is called direct movement. That's what we see here. Our eye follows a contiguous edge or line along a direct path. The lit up streets and rooftops all connect and create a zigzag maneuver that walks us through the space. The second type of movement is called implied. Here we don't follow an unbroken line. Our eye hops from one shape to another in a connect the dots fashion. Here the implied movement is indicated by the dotted line, where our eye jumps from the street to a rooftop and to the lake at the top. Implied movement can be responsible for just as much movement as direct pathways. I have an even better example of implied movement in the next painting. In this painting, most of the movement is implied. We actually have two sets of implied pathways. The first is 3 rows of rooftops that move horizontally, but they are also placed in steps, and here is where the movement is implied. We jump from one line of rooftops to the next in stair-step fashion. The second implied pathway is even more interesting. It starts in the lower right corner, takes us up and in between the rooftops, and then makes delicate hops into the distant space. I've also helped suggest depth through differences in size of the shapes. The rooftops in the foreground are larger and thicker, and the marks or dots of light get progressively thinner and narrower as we go up. A sense of scale is created near and far. Okay, I hope you found that interesting. Feel free to check out all the other articles I have on landscape painting at my blog, and you can also subscribe at YouTube. See you next time.